Get ready to unlock your full potential and change the trajectory of your life. This is the Steve Lags Unfiltered podcast. Hosted by the unstoppable force of inspiration himself, Steve Lags. He's on a mission to transform your mindset and help turn your dreams into reality. So, strap in, hold tight. The Steve Lags Unfiltered podcast starts now.
Hey, welcome to today's episode of the Steve Lags Unfiltered podcast. I got an amazing guest today I'm super excited to share with you. This guy is a 10X president. He's a 10X husband, 10X father, and he's one of my amazing 10X friends. He's president of Cardone Enterprises. It's Mr. Jarrod Glandt. Jarrod, welcome to the show today.
My man, it's great to be here with you.
Hey, I'm super excited about you coming. I know your time's really valuable, but we were just talking about a couple of minutes ago, 4 years ago, I'm sitting listening to the Young Hustlers podcast.
Yeah.
This guy, Jarrod, just introduced to me through Grant Cardone. Mm-hmm. I'm following Grant and then I'm start following you. And here we are today. We're going to sit down and have an amazing conversation about your journey of success and what that looks like. And because you're so inspirational, and maybe, where did you start when you came into Cardone Enterprises to where you are today? You're the president of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty long and fun journey, but it's just as amazing to sit here with you because this is really the true full circle of what we do. Like, right. From somebody that comes in from a book or something that they saw on social media, all the way through becoming, a partner.
Right.
And a business that everybody knows lags, right. and because you've done everything right. And so, I don't do a ton of podcast stuff outside because we got so much of our own stuff going on.
You sure do.
And when my assistant said that you wanted to get this set up, I was like, immediately, yes, I'll do it because you are somebody that people need to see and need to hear from and need to follow because you are the example of what all this work that we have done. It's what it's supposed to work out to be like.
Right.
And in life, like there's so many people, like we were saying before, they just have the wrong data, the wrong information, missing information, wrong people in their life, and they struggle and they're completely unaware of it. And for me, if I go back 13 years when I started working for Grant, there was a lot of missing information. There was a lot of people around me who I didn't, I thought were assets, but they were really liabilities. I thought they were friends, but they were really people that were, I don't think overtly like trying to be a detractor or anything like that, but they're just doing things and living a lifestyle that was not conducive to what I was trying to do.
Right.
And eventually what happens is the more aware of those things you become, the easier it is to break them off, but you can't do that without new information. And so as I started with Grant is, answering phones and sales. Like I was basically, there was three of us. So yeah. there was like, I was the receptionist, I was the sales guy, I was customer service, like I was everything. And, oftentimes when you're getting started for people that are maybe just getting started in business or they have a small company, like you get it, you're wearing a lot of hats. And I think really what happened was, I just had a lot of responsibility for what was happening, not early on in the beginning, but after about 3-4 months, I was like, okay, there's no real help here. I have to create on this. Right. And it was creating the pitch. And it was, I told Grant, I'm like, hey, we probably should hire another sales guy so we could, and he goes, yeah, hire him. And I was like, I'm just like the sales guy.
Right.
Like I wasn't like I wasn't a manager. I wasn't. So I just started, hired a guy he was working at a business that I was cold calling. Then I started getting clients. He started getting some clients. I'm training him. And then I'm like, man, I got too many clients and they all want help at the same time. So we need a customer service person. So then that gave birth to our client performance customer service division. So it was like all of these crazy things that were happening in the beginning. But having responsibility for things that are going on around you is one of the most important things that if you're an employee, you have. If you start a business, like responsibility and ownership is everything. It gets you to the point where you're paying attention to enough of the right things to actually make things go right.
Yeah. So when you talk about assuming responsibility for what's happening around you, so you could have walked into there and thought small and just said, well, my job is just to simply do this.
Oh yeah.
I'm the sales guy, so I'm going to sell.
Yeah.
But what is it? How's that mind shift happen where you're like, is that something that's just ingrained in you where you came in and like, hey, I'm just going to give everything I have to the opportunity and not look at it as, well, that's not my job, that's not my role. Is that just something, was that in your DNA, or you raised that way, or did you learn how to be that way? Like, how does that happen? Because you came in as an employee.
Yeah.
You're the ultimate entrepreneur. You're super successful, happy, wealthy, great family. You have everything, and you're working on so much more. So how does that happen?
Yeah, I'll tell you, because I mentioned earlier just a minute ago, I was like, yeah, after like 3 or 4 months, things changed. Because when I went up to LA, I grew up in San Diego. The office was in LA, so I moved to LA away from my family or my friends. My family had already moved out of town, but I left everything I was comfortable with,
right?
Because I was in a moment where, in my 20s. 20 years old, I was selling for Auto Trader at the time. Okay. And I was like one of the youngest reps in the country. I was number 2 in the country.
Yep.
And I had this little, like an eighth of San Diego was my territory,
like
and I was like crushing
You're the guy.
And so all this, potential and, VPs calling me, like all kinds of accolade and accomplishment, I guess you could say at a young age. And then I just started making bad decisions and ended up, going out a lot, partying a lot, drinking too much,
right.
Doing drugs, smoking weed every day. Like that's always like the thing is like, I started smoking weed. I was just turned into a loser. I ended up on unemployment.
Right.
And I was in a moment in my life I haven't cracked the code on how to get people to avoid this.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when people's backs are to a wall and they have that like rock bottom moment, they finally are open to like the thing that they could have done without all the pain and suffering. Like, right. I don't know how to, I haven't figured out. Some people just need to go through that in order to have that moment where they're like, I'm going to go all in. And so that's really where I was when I accepted the job with Grant. Is I was just like, hey, look, like I got to make something happen in my life.
Yeah.
I looked at my friends. They were all getting married. They were, starting to have kids. And I'm 26, 27 years old. And I'm like, man, I feel like musical chairs is going on right now, right. And the music is about to stop, and I'm the only one that doesn't have a chair.
Right.
And so it was like, you've got to make this work. And then for the first 90 days that I was working for Grant, I was like in LA, like our office is on Sunset, he lives next to Leo DiCaprio. Like I start getting into this whole thing. I'm still smoking weed every day, And I got to the point where, I'm hearing about, everybody hears about being goal focused, but like the first time I actually started writing goals down every day,
right.
So like now I was taking these visions of grandeur that I had in my head about being successful one day, and I was making them real in the physical universe, like writing down on paper every day. And so right. I got more connected with what I actually wanted my life to look like.
Yeah.
And so for me, after 90 days, I really looked back and knew, like, I'm like, you have not committed yet. And it wasn't until I was like, because I was ready to quit. I remember I called my dad. I was like, hey, look, I might have to move back out to Austin and live with you guys for a while. Like, right. It's just really hard. It's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And they're like, well, we'll support you in everything that you do. And I remember sitting down, and I was on the couch at a subleased room, and I was like, dude, have you gone all in yet? In my head, I'm asking myself this. I'm like, and now I've got enough of the right information around me that I'm like, right. Dude, you got to play a different level, and you got to start taking some responsibility, and you got to walk into that place like you own the place,
right? And
you got to make decisions like you own the place, like you need to show up,
fully commit,
and that's when everything changed for me. And we were in California at the time. I was calling all across the country. So I was in the office at 6 o'clock every morning. I was leaving at 7 o'clock every night, Monday through Friday. Saturdays, I was showing up at the office at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, stay until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And I did that for 2 years. I slept on an air mattress, was broke. I didn't have a lot of clothes, but I was focused all in on making this work.
Right.
And for me, that burned the ships, kind of like, I'm all in now. This is my only option. I'm not going to quit. That forces you to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And even for things that you're like one of the exercises that I picked up from Grant was like, if your food order comes to you wrong, or if you get in a car accident, or like how do you accept responsibility for everything? And that seems so unnatural and irrational for people, but it really is. It reframed how I looked at life.
Right.
And it put me in a position where I'm like, yep, if I wouldn't have done this, if I wouldn't have done that, it's my should have done this, I could have done that. And it actually eliminates the victim, and it puts you in control.
So I love that. Like Grant says, it doesn't happen to you; it happens because of you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and you see people in our society today get so programmed to being the victim all the time, always the victim.
Yep. Somebody else. Why this? Why
me?
Yeah.
But and if we know going through life things are going to happen, we know things are going to happen. That are out of our control. But when something happens out of our control, we could choose to focus on what's out of our control or what we could control in the situation, even though it might sound, even when you get in, like my wife got in a car accident recently, and we're not a victim.
Yeah.
What could we control? What did we learn from this? And this is what we're going to talk about with our children. Not like that, oh my God, poor us. We got into an accident, it's so bad, and all these problems, as opposed
There's so much power in that. Like in just being around people that operate like that.
Yes.
Like for your kids to see that. Yeah. And for your kids to be able to go like, oh, my mom and dad don't make excuses.
That's right.
Like they learn from things that happen to them. Like accepting responsibility puts you in a position where you can say, hey, something went wrong. I could have done this differently. And now I know next time for this to happen with relationships, bad things that happen to you, bad investments that you make. Like, what is the thing that you missed? You didn't get ripped off. You missed something that would have told you that the guy you were putting that money with was a crook.
That's right.
What did you miss? What did I miss?
Right.
And so that is one of people always ask me like, hey, what are the things that you learned from Grant that affected you the most? And that's definitely at the top of the list.
That's right. Not being a victim. So it sounds like which the game changer for you, back to the original question, is once you got more connected with your goals, and said, I'm going all in.
And I was all in. And I was, because when you're all in and you've accepted responsibility, then everything is your fault.
Right.
And so everything that wasn't happening around me that should have been happening was my responsibility to fix. Yeah. And so it just completely changed my perspective. And so then I started looking for all of the things, and I got highly interested in the business. Where do we get leads from? At the time, we didn't really get a lot of leads. It was from phone calls. But then I'm like, well, how come we don't get leads?
Right.
And I'm like, I go on the website. There was not a lead form on the website.
Okay.
So I told the website guy, I'm like, dude, you got to put a place for people to submit a lead here. Like, I don't know how many we're going to get, but all I'm doing all day is smoking phone calls, cold calls, and I'm getting my teeth kicked in. Like, if I got one a week, it's going to be good news for me. So just little things like that you start picking up, and then it's like, and then creating this little area over here where like your job is onboarding the client now because I can't do everything. And then when the guy I'm negotiating was like, put Grant on the phone, it's the only way I'll do the deal. I got to accept responsibility in that situation. How do I take that off so that I'm not a prisoner to the guy that wants to talk or the gal that wants to talk to Grant in order to do the deal? Yeah. So it's just those things compound, and then it ultimately turns into something where you've like me after 13 years, I've always since early on looked at the business as, okay, what's my responsibility here? How do I take this thing to the next level? Yeah,
so you were taking ownership for the success of the business as a whole as well, and you're innovating, you're coming up with ideas, and you're bringing them to the table. And then Grant's like, "Great, go with that." And before you know, if I'm hearing this right, as you're going on, you're starting to be, you're beginning to lead different aspects of the business because you're helping him build,
generate revenue.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
That's like,
it's the same thing that happened with me and my dad. When I started in the business, we were much smaller, and I'm like, "Hey, Dad, we don't have a website."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, I'll make a website. I'll do it at night." Okay, good. And then all of a sudden we're getting leads, and, "Hey, Dad, we got to do this. Dad, we need to get voicemail because people are calling at night. I'm tired of staying here till 9 p.m. at night to get the West Coast phone
business
answered.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, go do it." And then before you know it, all of a sudden, like, I'm just like working myself into leading the company.
Yeah.
And one day we'll look at it and be like, hey, yeah, you're the president. You're going to become the president of the company.
Yeah.
Is it kind of similar?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Okay, that's awesome.
And Grant would, you know, he would ask me like, hey dude, when are you going to step up? I'm like, I'm kind of stepping up. Like, what do you, I expected him to, you know, like I never went to him and said, Grant, like, I want to be like, well, eventually I did, but I didn't go in saying like, hey, you keep hiring these guys that aren't working out. Like, why don't you just make me that guy for you? Like I just kept doing that thing.
Right.
And then he would ask like, dude, when you gonna step up? Like, what's, you know, like, and you know, finally I remember we were on a plane. It was the first time I flew on a private jet. And I'd just done this big deal with Kawasaki. I'd been with him for 2 years, I think, or something like that, maybe 3 years. And I was writing this letter that they were going to send out to all their dealers. And I was writing this letter and I just said, you know, Jarrod Glandt, you know, vice president of Grant Cardone Enterprises. Right. And I showed him the laptop. I said, you cool with this? And he had his headphones on and he took them off. He's like, are you ready? And I'm like, let's go, dude.
Yeah.
And so that was like the time, like I told him, like it wasn't, you know, I just told him, I'm like, hey, I'm this guy now.
Yeah.
And then I did the same thing when I was president. I'm like, dude, I should be the president of the company. Like this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm responsible for. I'm not the vice president because I'm worrying about everything.
Right.
Not just this thing. And so that's who I should be. Okay.
That's crazy because my journey in my business, TRC Electronics, is the same thing. I was giving myself the titles and my dad's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm a sales manager now. Yeah, and sales and marketing manager. Yeah, you're right. Then I was like, all right, now I'm the vice president now. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, Dad, now it's time for me to run a show.
Yeah. Same thing, dude.
That's crazy.
And you know, I haven't.
It takes courage, though, right?
Yeah, but you know, like also for me, like I think that other people would have push for that sooner. And, you know, like probably, you know, assets and liabilities, right? So like, I'm a relatively humble person. Like I was just raised, you know, going to church, pride comes before a fall, be humble, have humility, you know, don't be the loud person trying to get all the attention because you want it that way. And so I've always kind of had that and, you know, it helps me, I think, because it makes me maybe more relatable or approachable or something. I don't know. But on the other side, you know, like when you have, I guess the opposite of humility is arrogance,
right?
To the extreme, right? Ego, you know, like if in areas that is more of that is healthy. Like it probably would have accelerated me a little bit more, but I always, you know, err on the side of like, I should have gotten this 8 months ago because I've been doing all the right things, but I got it now and I didn't have to do something that was unnatural for me to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
So what you're describing long term is going to help you succeed more. The you know, being a little more aggressive and a little more arrogant might help you in the short run, but in the long term, that's not going to help. You know, I share the same values where I'm a pretty humble guy, you know, because I always know there's another level.
Yeah.
And you learn that if you surround yourself with the right people, because then you realize you could get humbled really quickly in certain rooms. You're oh shit, I haven't accomplished shit in my life.
Yeah.
When I'm in certain rooms, and you're like, wow, there's just so much more to learn and to drive more impact.
And it really helps you reach for those things.
Right.
It's like if you know everything, you can't learn anything. And so it's like for me, having been around Grant and then obviously having the opportunity over the last 4 years to be around Brandon and just seeing guys that are playing the game at a different level, like it's just like, how can you not just sit around and learn all that you can?
That's right.
And when I look in the company and I see people that you know, like maybe sales guys as they're starting out, like, and they have a lot of arrogance and bravado and all of this stuff. They don't move. Like they produce, but they never move.
Right.
Because it's like you constantly have to be looking for that next thing.
Yeah.
Like what is the thing? And I tell the sales guys all the time, I'm like, the number one thing you should be thinking with every single day outside of how do I get a deal is how does this place work? Like the most valuable people to a business owner, as you know, are the people who take the time to go look around and be like, I know this thing is the thing I do every day,
right,
but how does this company actually work? Like what are they, why are they promoting what they're promoting to drive traffic to a page to get a lead who then is ultimately becomes the lead that I call?
Right.
And then who's the person on the call? And then what would need to change for me to get a different person on the call? And like just being curious.
Yeah.
And without humility, I don't think you can be curious or you close the door off to that. So,
yeah. What you're describing is intellectual curiosity, and business owners can be just as guilty of that as well, you know, where they're not.
Yeah.
But, if you're curious, you're thinking bigger and you're open to different ideas and how does this actually work? And if you really, when you're not, you're just thinking small.
Yeah.
I've just got my job. I'm going to close the deals. Well, you're going to be stuck in that job. And then also, you guys are a development company. You started off basically sales and business development becomes so much more. But what are you doing to develop yourself? Like, hey, you like, how do I fit in this bigger picture? What am I missing? What do I need to understand and learn so that I can develop and add more value besides, otherwise I'm in this role forever.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, at different stages of time, like before Brandon came along, like we never talked about taking the company public or anything like that. Like we had a great business. It was growing every month over month, year over year for, 9 years at the time. Grant's real estate portfolio was growing. He had Ryan over on that side. So I'm like, okay, the business thing is just my thing. And then when Brandon came along and I started hearing about his side of the business and his background, I'm like, oh, well, there's another level to this business thing.
Yes.
And so then we, most recently we're, talking about taking the company public and, a lot of private equity talks and buying and selling businesses. And then you get into the financial structure of these deals and what going public actually means. And then what you're obligated to do because of that. Right. And then how the benefits and the pros and the cons, and then how do you structure the deals? And so what do? I'm like, I got to dive into like private equity and figure out how these giants make their money,
right?
And how they have these crazy legal teams that structure deals with all these clauses, and it's financial engineering, and there's and I'm like, I know nothing. Huh. I mean, I went to school for business, but like not that kind of business,
sure.
And we didn't learn about that. And even if I did at the time, I would have had no context, right. So I would have no interest in it because I didn't know what it actually meant.
Yeah.
But now I see that this is like, hey, this is the next level here.
Right.
So you go from $150 million a year, privately held company to bring in Cardone Ventures and everything. Now you got a $3.5 billion publicly traded company.
Right.
And what are you going to do next? Okay, well, now it's like, okay, we just accelerate the thesis of the business and bring more customers in, help them grow their business, partner with them, do that a bunch of times. And then somebody else comes along and go, man, we're going to pay everybody gobs of money because what you've built here is so phenomenal.
Right.
And so understanding that process has really been my next thing.
Yeah.
Is like, how does this all work?
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. And there's so much money there.
Right.
Like, and, everybody that you hear about being involved in these types of things is like, I'm reading about the Steve Schwartzman, Guy Hands, Carlyle, Rubenstein at Carlyle, all the big private equity firms, KKR, DLJ, like these guys, and just the story about how everything started and where it is now, everything that happened in the middle, all the money that was made. And it's like, man, everybody's Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Oxford, Stanford. Really yeah, like these are the people that are playing that game.
Yeah.
All of them. They all went to these crazy schools, and I'm like, well, how? And our deal is we're like, okay, well, how do we get the biggest opportunity to people who never got that opportunity?
Right.
And so it's like now what I feel this next iteration of it is we're gonna do what we did for real estate, which is take Wall Street quality assets, Class A, top Park Place assets to an investor who normally wouldn't have access to that.
Yeah. Like I participate.
Yep. Likewise do I. And now we're going to do that with private equity.
That's awesome.
And we're going to take this thing that's mysterious and, they're making all this money doing it. And we're going to bring that and we're going to make it accessible to the average everyday American who would never have access to that. And so like, that's the most exciting thing is not just are we building something and we're doing something, but it's actually making a huge difference. And it's literally like Grant changed the way, like he was the first person to raise a Regulation A real estate fund for non-accredited investors.
Yeah.
He's raised more money on Instagram for real estate than anybody else in the country, in the world. Yeah. I mean, like over $1 billion. Like it's just we're getting to do things that are exciting because they're big and they're new and he's educating the people that are participating too. Yep.
Like I'm just on his investor call. There's over 1,000 people on it, and he basically gives you an hour or two course every time, and he's explaining and answering questions.
Yeah.
From the investors. You just don't get that access.
Yep.
So not only are you benefiting from the financial success of it, but you're also learning and understanding what you're investing in. I have a question for you. So we're talking about money right now, and I love money. But what would you say to the person? What does someone need to hear that says to you, "Yeah, but it's enough money. What you don't need more money, Jarrod."
Yeah.
Why? What does that person need to hear when they say, "Hey, there's a point where it's enough. You don't need any more."
Yeah, I mean, I think that look, like that is money is a question and a topic that people have very contentious things about. I personally believe that people who have given up on money targets, number one, either have just quit and they don't want to play the game. Cause like to make money, like you don't just go to work and work 9 to 5.
Yes.
Like if you want to make money, you have to play a different game.
Yes.
You have to develop yourself. You have to be around different people, like all the things that you've done. And so I think people just check out on that and they're like, I don't want to do all that work.
Is that how they make sense of it?
Too much money must be a bad thing.
Right.
And then I think that there's the other lot of people who have really failed to understand the necessity of money. Like obviously, I need money to pay my bills, but how much is actually required for them to be secure.
Right.
And that's at like a basic level. For me, I think about money as like, this is the tool, this is the thing that I need, the resource that I need to live my ideal life.
Right.
And for me, I'm not writing down every day, I want to be a billionaire. Like I'm not there yet.
Right.
And maybe at that point the game comes into play and then I'm like, okay, well, how far can I run the score up?
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm like, what's my ideal life look like? If everything were perfect, like take away all the mechanics, take away all of the considerations of, anything like I can't get this, or what if take all of that off the table and just go, if you could draw up your ideal life, what would it look like?
Right.
Work, personal time, travel, family, friends, church, community, the things you're a part of, the things you're doing, like what would your ideal life look like? And then take the time to actually figure out how much that costs.
Right.
Like we do a ton of stuff with kids, and like I'm part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program again for the second year that we've done it. And these kids come in and we talk about goals. We just did a thing with them last week on goals. And when you write down like what are the things that you want, like what are some goals that you have? And then you go, what would be a goal income for you? And it's just, it doesn't register. And they're 17 years old. So helping them understand this, if somebody would have mapped this out for me at 17, my perspective would have totally changed.
Right.
But I'm like, look, so you want to have a $4 million house in Dallas and, do this, but you say you want to make $300,000 a year. So let me just tell you what happens with that 300. That 300 becomes 175,
right?
Off the top.
Yep.
And then that 175, if you break it out per month, is about $15,000 a month. And your mortgage on a $4 million house is probably going to be about $19,000, $20,000 a month.
Right.
So the numbers don't work.
Right.
And that's the purpose of doing this, is so that you have the right targets from the beginning. so that you're chasing the right things from the beginning.
Yes.
Because if you have the wrong targets from the beginning and you're chasing this target, that's why 10X is so important. Because then you get to this target and then you realize that you had set a target that was far below what you actually needed in order to get you where you needed to be.
And that's so discouraging.
And then you just want to give up.
Yep.
And so, you know, there's a lot of little things in there that you know, that can trigger a negative situation for people.
Yeah.
But mostly it's just like, dude, you got to set a big target. You got to figure out what is the cost of that? And then how much money do I need to make to do that?
Right.
And for me, my ideal life is more important than the work that I do.
Right.
Like you show me a different way to do this and to get that. And it's, you know, hand painting design on floors.
Yeah, you'll do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like I'll whatever I need to do in order to get the ideal life that I want.
Right.
Now, there's an element of the work that I'm doing that is included in that ideal life, which is helping people.
Right.
And, you know, the business that we're doing, we're helping a lot of people.
Right.
So, you know, I think for people, just to go all the way back to the question, you know, when is enough is enough? Like enough is enough when you're living your ideal life and you have enough money that if anything happened, you're still going to be okay.
Yes.
And so, because why live anything less than the life that you dream of?
Right.
Like, why not live your ideal life?
Yeah, why not pursue that?
The only reason you would give up on that is because you've given up.
Right. You don't believe in yourself.
You don't believe in yourself. You don't believe it's possible. So that should be the target. The target should be, what is my ideal life? And it's changed for me. Mm-hmm. You know, it goes from things to people and to experiences.
Right.
And, you know, like, you know, I bought the fast car and did that whole thing. I drove it for 6 months. I'm like, man, this isn't my thing.
Car seats don't fit in it.
So yeah, so no car seats for kids. So, you know, you iterate, but you should always have that thing that you're reaching for.
Right.
And you should always know how the thing that you're doing today, the work that you're doing today, brings you one day closer to that target.
Right. As long as you have targets, you have to have them crystal clear.
Goals should back into targets.
Right.
And targets are the things that you do every single day that drive you towards the goal. That way, at the end of every day, you know, did I get closer? Did I get further away?
Right.
And every day brings you closer to your goals. And that's why when you when you spend the time to do this the right way, and you're disciplined with following it,
right,
then every day you should be excited.
Yeah.
Because you know you're getting one step closer.
Right.
And the more you develop your skill set, so where you can predictably create the outcome that you want.
Yes.
And the more fun it gets.
Yeah.
It's like going to the arcade and winning the game every time.
Right.
It's like going to the ATM and putting your card in and, you know, asking for $100 and it spits out 1,000. You're like, man, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yes.
And so as you know, like as the business starts functioning and working better, you start getting, your belief lid goes up, your confidence goes up. Like you're like, I'm capable of doing more.
Yeah.
And that's why the goal gets bigger.
Right.
And so when people say like, you have enough, well, how does the billionaire go to the next level? Because they're capable of things now that they weren't capable of before, and they see opportunities that they didn't see before.
Yeah.
And so then they're chasing now. It now becomes a spiritual pursuit.
That's right.
Of what are you actually capable of?
You're chasing their potential.
And that's the thing that is, there's no dollar amount on that. There's no end to that, because it's God or whoever you believe in. God has blessed you with gifts and talents and abilities. And it's up to you to figure out if you're going to use them all.
That's right.
And when you play the game at that level, like that's when the money becomes a byproduct of everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
And it just becomes what can I actually accomplish?
Right. I think what's important for a lot of people is, they might have a target and they have a goal and figure out the targets, but they don't have the blueprint, and then they don't have the confidence to commit to a path. And that's why it's so important, where I've reached out and found you guys, is like, okay, I want to succeed in certain areas of my life. Where can I learn that from? Where can I get the blueprints?
Yep.
So that I know someone who's done it and has repeated it with other people and been able to get other people to duplicate it. Mm-hmm. Then that's like where, hey, I'm going to do a diet. And you're like, I don't know if this diet's going to work. And then someone else says, hey, look, I'm the health figure that you want to accomplish, and I've duplicated this with 5 other people. Follow my plan. Oh shoot, now I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. The same thing with business and life. Like, find somebody who's accomplished what you're trying to accomplish, and they've been able to duplicate it and go do it, and they can go all in.
People make it more complicated than that, and it's not.
It doesn't need to be that complicated.
I use the analogy all the time. I'm like, look, if my grandma made really good chocolate chip banana muffins,
follow her recipe,
and she gave me the recipe on a card, and I gave you that card, like, they're gonna come out tasting the same.
And don't change the recipe.
And don't do anything different. If she says let it sit for 30 minutes, let it sit for 30 minutes.
Don't wait 15 minutes.
Follow the recipe.
Right.
And business is like that.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that every offer that you have is great, or that the market is going to see value in the idea that you have. But once you've validated a concept, like, growing that business is a function of strategy, sales, marketing, operation, people, leadership, finance, technology, data. And it's just implementing the program around that thing.
Yeah.
And, the depending on the size of the market, that could limit you. But, the question should always be like, if you're questioning whether the business that you're in is the right business or not, the question should always be, is there anybody in this business that has a business as big or bigger as I'd like my business to be?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then they figured something out.
Yes.
And that means it's possible. It just means you're missing something.
Right.
You're missing an ingredient of the recipe, and you just got to go back and you got to find that recipe.
Right.
And that's the cool thing for me about business, is because then it's just always figuring out, how are we getting traffic?
Right.
How are we going to convert the lead? How are we going to deliver the product? How are we going to get great people around? How are we going to make sure those people can grow and become more responsible in the business?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that we continue to operate and function efficiently? Like, it literally, you're just running a play.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets really fun.
Right.
Now,
you get the blueprint and you've got these targets, these goals, but now you're going to be uncomfortable. You got to overcome fear, right? I would like to hear, so, you've done some incredibly big things, big events with Grant. What's an experience that comes to mind where, like, you were like, oh shit, this scares me, and like, I'm going to have to overcome fear to, like, where you're going through that experience, but you just keep going towards it, and maybe it's exciting, but some people would be like, oh my God, I can't do this.
Yeah, I'll tell you just straight up, I would definitely not do half of the things that Grant does.
Okay.
Like I don't have that fearless, I have too much of the analyzer in me to go into a complete, just like, this guy's got balls, man. Like, he just, we walked into Marlin Stadium for the 2019 GrowthCon. And Sherry's like, oh, we should just go check it out. It's another venue. It's in Miami. We'd done Vegas before. So it's like, let's bring it back to Miami. Let's do it here. But there really wasn't a venue that was big enough compared to the 9,000 people we just did. And so she goes, let's go check out Marlin Stadium. Grant didn't want to do it. I'm thinking, do you know how hard it's going to be to sell all those tickets?
How many months before the event?
It was a year.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
It was a year. This was a lift.
Okay.
And so Grant went in and he was like, oh yeah, we're doing this. And then the thing that he doesn't tell people about this story is, when we were walking out, he put his arm around me and he goes, bro, how you going to sell all these tickets? And I literally started grinding my teeth. I was so stressed out for like 9 months about selling this event out. I had to get Invisalign because, like, I was getting like gaps in my teeth because I was like literally tripping. And then I took over. I was writing every email, like, to the list that was selling a lot of the tickets, and it was like every day I'm like, oh God, we're off target today. Got to send a good one. Got to get the phones to ring.
So what was that conversation, you going home to your wife and be like, you're not going to believe this?
Yeah, I mean, all she can do is try to empathize with me, because she doesn't. Nobody knows how hard that lift is. But the reason why it works great with Grant is because he's bold enough to take that big swing.
Yeah.
And
just commit to
and
it.
I'm committed enough that when I'm in something, I'm going to fucking make it work.
Right.
And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it work.
Right.
And so while I would probably say no or to a smaller scale on those things, everything I do, I make work.
Right.
And I don't want to set a target and then come up short.
Right.
And so, and so for me that, Grant makes these big leaps because he's taken these big swings. And I would, he always says, you're so paced. You're so much more paced than I am.
Right.
And because I'm going to be like incremental growth.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to that next thing and I'm going to figure out
you just chip away at it.
Figure out the algorithm of it, figure out the mechanics. Okay, good. Got my numbers good. Crank. Start cranking it up and then do it that way.
Right.
He's like, step up, swinging out of my shoes. I'm going to knock this ball out the park.
Yeah. So he's a visionary.
Yeah.
And you're a great operator with the business.
And really in our business, for me, it's Sherry and myself.
Yeah.
And, all things sales and marketing, offers, products, comp plans tied to commissions. And like, that's just the thing I love and live in.
Right.
And, administrative hiring, HR functions, like that whole thing, like just the operational side of the business. Mm-hmm. It's just not my thing. Like I want to create the thing that rings the bell.
Right. This is where you create more value.
Yeah. And I'm a sales guy and a marketing guy, and that's how my brain works.
Right.
And when I get bogged down into like meetings about this, I'm just like, we just need to go create more of that.
Right.
And then this problem will work itself out. And
right.
and Grant is like that all the way. Mm-hmm. I'm halfway in between him and Sherry. I've got enough of this and enough of this to not make a mess, because we have to clean the mess up. That's really what the job is to clean the mess up that gets created. In the best way possible. And then Sherry and I, tag team back and forth. And that's why you got to have like a team.
Yeah.
Because, the dynamic that we have is perfect. Mm-hmm. What I do, what Sherry does, what Grant does is perfect. It's the perfect dynamic. And as you're growing a business, you have to look for those roles. Like, who's going to be the manager? Who's going to be the builder? Who's going to be the visionary? Right. And the visionary can't be the builder, mm-hmm. and the visionary can't be the manager. And so everybody has to have their role. Right. And when I really think about that, I'm like, it's like that in life. Everybody has their role with your friends, like
in families. Totally.
And you have to be aware enough to know. Like Grant and I were talking about this deal that we're doing in a couple weeks, and we're talking about the 10 elements of scale, and we're talking about data. And I immediately go to business metrics and all this stuff. And he's like, look, dude, you can't be like, if you have broken stats mm-hmm. and broken data in your personal life, right, then you will have broken data in your business. And the bigger idea there is, I'm like, well, I know overweight people who make money. Right. He's like, yeah, but what's their car look like? Mm-hmm. What's their house look like? Mm-hmm. They have one thing that is not, all in strong, but like, look at the rest of their life. Like where rarely, do you find people that are extremely successful in work and their life is a wreck? Yeah, sometimes. But more often than not, you find people who are not successful and their life is a wreck. Right. And so, like having the ability to look at your personal life and understand how that impacts and influences your professional life, right, is very important. People try to keep those separate.
Yeah, they try to put silos.
Yeah, but you can't. Yeah, it's one environment that you're in, because you're the same person everywhere you go.
That's right.
And you carry whatever you had over here, you're carrying into that next thing.
Right. It's not like you flip a switch at 9:00 and then you turn it off at 5.
No.
Yeah, and that's why when a lot of people think, oh, that's work, this is life, where, well, you want to live a life where it all blends together. Yeah. And you're just like, you don't know what is what at certain points. Yeah. You're like, I don't know if I'm working right now or if I'm having fun.
I gotta read you this quote, because I found this quote a while back, and when I read it, I was like, this embodies who I want to be in life. Okay. Like, this is everything. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he's working or playing. To him, he's always doing both.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And for me, I'm like, that is my life.
Right.
I want to be the same person all the time. I want all of these things to come together as one, because the more separate they get, that's why people wake up and they're Monday, they're like, I
gotta go to work.
And so like the integration of your life. The entrepreneur, I think, is forced to do it in a different way because of the amount of responsibility that they have. I think if you're an employee, for some people, an employee, they're like, I just work for the guy, like, and they create those walls.
Yeah.
I got to get to happy hour, and I got, but you look at guys like Grant and Brandon, like they have integrated their whole life around this.
That's right.
And they love it.
Yeah.
And they spend time with the people they love. And, I'm very, like, my family, like, it's like top of my list is being with my wife and hanging out with my kids and being there for them and sharing experiences with them. But I also want to give them a great life. Yeah. And I also know that if I'm not doing meaningful work and I'm not successful and I don't have the stats in of the business, then I'm not going to be a great husband and I'm not going to be a great dad. So it's like, I got to be great over here. You got to be great with your spouse.
Right.
Because if you're not great with your spouse, then your kids are going to have issues. So you got to be great in all these areas.
That's 10X.
And the only way to do that is to not turn things off.
Yeah.
And for people think that turning themselves off gives them a break, but it actually breaks that momentum that they have and that discipline of building that ideal version of themselves.
Yeah.
And so this, when Grant first explained this, I'm like, oh, that's right. And then I read that quote years ago, but I was like, this is perfect.
It's amazing.
This is what you aspire to do,
Yeah, you're such an amazing example. I love
appreciate that. You are too, dude.
I appreciate that.
Family, work, in shape, like doing all the right things, got a great business, staff loves you, they appreciate what you're doing. Like that really is what for me, why it's there's a lot of stuff that we do, a lot of podcasts and interviews and travel and trips and weekends and all these things that we do as a part of this business. And when you see people who take it and they go do it,
right,
and it works, you're like, that is the ultimate payoff.
Right.
That somebody did this. And, we've had a lot of people that have won over the years. And unfortunately, some people they win. And then they're like, I got a different idea or a new way I want to do it or try it.
Right.
And then they go down another path and they get off track.
Right.
And then next thing you know, like they'll be back at an event a year and a half later. They're like, like, where you been? He's like, oh man, I had some personal things going on and this, it's just good to be back.
Yeah.
But to have the discipline to take the information, put it to work, keep showing up, keep doing it. It's the most exciting part about our business is seeing successful people like you who've put it all together. So
yeah, I just think there should be more people out there pursuing their full potential and setting an example of what's possible, because I feel like if I can accomplish it, anybody can accomplish it. It's just being committed to it and believing I can do it.
It can happen for anybody, and all you need to do is get the right people around you who will support you in that.
I love it. Man, I appreciate you so much today.
Yeah, it was good to be here, man.
Yeah.
It was a good time, and just reach out to, I'll just tell you, I've been around tens of thousands of business owners. Reach out to Steve, connect with him, because this guy has got, he knows, he's learned it, and then he's used it, he's applied it, and he's gotten the outcome. And so anything that this guy tells you, he is literally, it is proof that it works, and you should take what he says and run with it. Because it's the same thing that I'm going to tell you to do.
I appreciate that. So how could the audience reach you?
Yeah. So if you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook if you use that, or LinkedIn, just Jarrod Glandt, at Jarrod Glandt. That's me.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you so much, man.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all for today's Steve Lags Unfiltered Journey. Keep soaring leading, and conquering with us. Remember, it's not just about listening, it's about learning and taking action. If today ignited your drive, join us next time for more unfiltered wisdom. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to fuel your success journey. Also, be sure to listen to us on your favorite podcast channel or outlet. Stay tuned, stay unfiltered, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Boom.